picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
Hello and welcome back. It's week 2 of the Amtronic / Saturn V build. And we've basically lost all the progress that we made last week on the windows. I glued them all in, left them dry all weekend, and as I was cleaning them up this morning, they popped right out of their frames. So I'm gonna have to find another adhesive. That was the canopy glue, the tester's clear windows / canopy glue. It did not work. It failed. It let me down horribly. So I'm cleaning these frames out, and I am going to try to figure out what is the next strongest adhesive I can use. I know CAs are out because they haze up clear styrene. So luckily I have some clear styrene left on the sprues and those green windows, so I can try some other glues to see what effect they have on it, and that'll give me a good experimental test bed. Got the wheels done on the suspensions, things like that, so progress is being made. It's just slow. Okay, so I am trying round 2, no puns intended, round 2 on the windows for the Amtronic, and I'm using the Tamiya extra thin cement this time. I tried it out on one of these tinted windows and it did not put a haze on it like CA does. I don't know what the deal was with the canopy cement. It not only did it not hold, but it did not clean off of the windows very well either, so I've got some scratches. And I'm hoping to minimize those and maybe coat them with a coat of Future after everything is said and done to clean them up again, but they are getting damaged. They are taking hits. So now that those are in and drying, I am going to see about hitting this. I need to spray some beige in there and try to clean that up a bit and do the inside of the canopy as well. So let me get the beige out and do some more painting. Looky, we got one assembly done of one of the main first stage engines, and now that I see all the pitfalls and now how it goes together, and knowing that I had 4 more of these to do, I know which parts need to be sanded, which is basically all of them. This part here is cast in one piece. It does not have as ugly a seam as it would if you were having to glue 2 halves together. We've all been there. We know how ugly that can be. But it did have a little bit of a mold flash seam that I did have to take a file to. And it looks like they are, if they all go the same, then they will all be on this inside edge. They won't be as visible as if they were pointing out, but they still need to get taken care of. These little guys are probably the worst because of the way they have to fit on. It wouldn't have killed them to put holes in this bottom plate and extend this piece down into those holes. I don't know why they didn't, but at this point nothing surprises me. What? You say Dragon didn't put a hole where they should have? I am shocked. Shocked, I tell you. But yeah, I mean, this is not glued down to here, so this can all still pop off, but to be painted and primed and all that. But now I know which parts are visible, which parts fit into which, and can proceed the rest of the way. As you just saw, it is a nasty, ugly, rainy day. Well, actually, it's not ugly. It's just rainy and breezy and not a good day for trying to paint anything outdoors or do any kind of big work. So it's a perfect day to be working on these nose cones or these thrusters, the engines, the things the smoke comes out of. And I've got one left. They're going together pretty easily. There's a little bit of seam work to clean up on them, and they'll look impressive, I'm sure, when they're all stacked on this plate the way they should be. Also, looking forward to how the results of the windows came out. I glued them in again yesterday with the extra thin Tamiya cement, and I may be doing a trick or two to hide that seam, because you just can't get that good clean seam between the clear glass windows and the shell or the window frame. So we'll work on that a bit today too, but primarily I want to get these thrusters and then the second stage thrusters done, or main engines done, and put those aside before I start working on the car again. And here's your impressive stack of all 5 of those engines. Once it dries up outside a little bit, I'll hit those with a bit of filler primer and sand down whatever seams still remain, and then put it aside to be ready to be painted. I have not attached them to this base plate yet, because the base plate itself needs to have a good deal of detail painting done to it before it's ready to accept those nozzles. But yeah, looks pretty impressive. I like it. Let's do this next cluster of thrusters and see how difficult they're going to be to do. Well, the good news is these are all, these second stage engines are all one piece. They do have a rather heavy seam to be cleaned up on 2 sides of it, but again, not as bad as they would be if you were having to piece everything together. This heavy seam is supposed to be there, it's baked in, but yeah, the sides need cleaned up a little bit, but it should take no time at all. It's a shame, really, you're going to end up covering up so much of that with this detail, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I suppose. Okay, having worked through the big massive parts, the rockets, the main hull, the things like that, it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty, and that is the lunar module and the command module, parts of which are in all these bags here. So I think I'm going to continue my building mode today, since it seems to be going well, and start on the lunar module and see how it fares in comparison to the instructions for the rest of the big parts of the rocket. I have high hopes. We'll just see if they're borne out. Okay, working on the lunar module, and I want to take a little break here to catch you up. Clearly, these instructions were not done with these parts in mind, or not all of them, because in this particular version of the model, these are 2 separate pieces, but on the tree, they were one piece that was already joined. So that took a little bit of head scratching as to why those were already put together. And the base is clearly not designed to reflect the foil wrapping that is on the part. The part is all, looks like it's got the foil wrapping on it, and the base here is shown as clean. So that makes me think that they copied and pasted instructions maybe from another kit where they used a smooth bottom for it. Yeah, it's not even carried over anywhere, so not that tough to figure out, but it just looks like they like I said, they may have copied and pasted from another kit. Well, I've discovered duplicate parts. What I was saying about this B21, B20, B22 configuration, those parts are here on the tree. So there's 20 and 21 and 22, but finding this piece all put together by itself, I went ahead and used it. I don't see any huge difference in it. Nope, the part doesn't have any more or less detail if you put it together with those 3 parts, so jolly yay, I just decided to use that. I don't think there is another one of these anywhere on the assembly that I should be looking for, so we'll find out. It's not like we haven't had leftover parts before. Strange but true. Tales of Lunar Module building. Okay, here's where all the clarity of the Ascent module of the Lunar Module falls to crap, because the foiled pieces are not reflected in the instructions. There are bonus pieces, I guess, if you want to have the landing gear deployed as opposed to retracted, I'm sorry, for when it's riding in its in the rocket, and they're just confusing me. The pieces are not all that well numbered. I'm trying to figure out on the clean instructions how to carry those over to the foiled up pieces, but when the pieces don't look right, and then there is, for example, there is a leg here that has the ladder on it, very nice, but it is not spelled out which of these legs that should be, and I guess you got to figure that out when you line up the top of it to figure out, okay, it's got to be on this one, but which one is that in the grand scheme of things, and which part does it replace, and what are these little stupid bone pieces for? You don't use these. It's just a mess. And those are the retracted pieces, I'm guessing, but then what? And there aren't really any good photos on the box to help. So it's back to the internet I go. Alrighty then. I've got the Lunar Module completed, not without having those two stages glued together. And this second stage, or this landing stage, this bit here, all of this, this was a product of me just throwing the horrible instructions away and just doing what I remembered the Lunar Module looking like from all the times I built it as a lad, although I've never built it with the foil representation on it. This is where you throw in the obligatory, they can send a man to the moon, but they can't make accurate instructions about how to build the ship that sends the man to the moon. I do not understand. I'm hungry, I need a donut. I do not understand why they screwed this up so badly. Again, none of the parts have the same number or the appearance of what's on the trees. We've got pieces I don't understand. We've got holes left in here that I don't know what they do. I'm going to go back and check some references online to see whether I might be missing something. I don't like the fact that, let me show an example on a typical leg. Not only do we have these holes left in the body, but we've got these guys opened up. I don't know if there's a part that needs to go between those. I will look, but I really don't. Sorry, get back. I really don't like the way I had to blindly figure this out. It doesn't make any sense to me. Put that on there while the feet are drying. Yes, I did not want to be defeated. This part went relatively painlessly because it's all nice and smooth and the part numbers actually matched a bit. But it seems to me that when they decided to make this foil-based stage, they did not change any of their instructions, nor did they change their part numbers. And these part numbers on these trees don't correspond. It's just stupid and thoughtless, and we deserve better than that. So I am going to consider a job well done and take a break. Okay, one mystery solved. It looks like there are a ton of these little tiny bone pieces that don't have any other purpose, and they go here to here, so that takes care of the hole problem and this open bracket problem. So something else I had to figure out for myself. Okay, looks like all of the parts I could find to use, I have used. And the nice thing about this foil contouring is, after I sand it, if I've got any gaps, I can just fill it in with putty and paint it orange, and no one will know the difference. But yeah, all those little bits and bobs are on there. Let me see, make sure those feet are all pointing in like they're supposed to. Should be appropriately pigeon-toed. Yeah, okay. So now we'll let this dry and go away, maybe have some lunch. Back from lunch, and the rain has stopped and the sun is threatening to come out, but it's still going to be too wet to do any painting today. So let's finish the building. All I have left to do is the command module and the little tower that goes on the top of that. So let's see how fast we can knock those guys out, and hopefully they won't be as difficult or vague in instructions as the Lunar Module was. Okay, it'll come as no surprise to anybody who's been following this project that things can go only so well, but for only so long, and then you have to run into a road, another diversion into what the hell were they thinking? I can tell that this command module and Lunar Module were from another kit. Obviously, they were from a 1/72nd scale, just those two pieces and nothing else kit. And when they came around to doing this version, they didn't think about that because the instructions make no sense whomsoever. They show parts like the underside of this part that bears no relationship to this. They show this part most intriguingly of all. You would assume that is the top of this part because the dome looks more finished than that side. Sorry, the dome looks more finished on that side than this. So you would assume this is the top. But it's not. It's actually the bottom because these pins, these 3 pins of Orient Eye, should be on the bottom. So that when you flip the whole thing over, it fits into those 3 holes. Okay, that makes sense. That goes like that to there. You drill those holes all the way through, and then you put these little cradle pieces for the capsule, and then that fits down on top of that, and that kind of locks it in place, keeps it from rocking back and forth. That makes sense. Now it makes sense. It didn't make sense at the time. I actually put the pieces on upside down. I put those little cradle pieces on this elevation instead of this elevation. So part of this is my unfamiliarity with the subject at hand, and part of this is just dumb as a stump instructions. This is not perhaps the best kit to start your career of doing real space object or real space ships with. Find something easier, sort of like this, which was an elaborately way small piece of detail parts that ultimately get covered up with this cap anyway. So I said to hell with that, took them out, put that cap on. I'm not going to be using them to dock these 2 pieces, and this piece here, which I can find no equivalent in the instructions, I figured out what it was. It's the docking piece that goes between these 2 kits, and it's not documented in here anywhere. Excuse me, I had a frog in my throat and it was making me croak. But because this model kit does not have any of that docking business, this piece is not used, but it was still on the tree, it was still taking up space, it was still in the way, and I think what it was is that they were just too lazy to make a new tooling, and they just threw a tooling in from that old kit. So tried to figure out why the Chinese don't have a viable space program. This is why. They can't even copy American plans accurately. Okay, the last bit of construction for the day, indeed the last bit of construction it looks like, is this escape tower. And for the life of me, I don't know why they molded it in clear. It makes no sense. But hey, I don't know how much I'm going to argue the point at this juncture. I don't know if I don't think I want to use this clear part, do I? I mean, it fits over top of it, yeah, but I thought I was using these holes. I'm sorry, I'm up here. I thought this thing here. I don't know whether I want to use that. I want to attach the tower to this, don't I? We're going to see which way it fits better. Okay, well, it looks like that tower is only meant to go on this clear piece, which I hate. I hate this idea, but like I said, I'm not all that used to building real space projects, so maybe this is normal, but I don't like it. This does fit over top of all of the, well, it does kind of. Let me see, I need to make it fit over top of all the little details I put on there. And then this sits on top of this. Now, I'm going to paint this in solid colors. I may leave this clear, but I'm going to paint that in solid colors because I just don't like the idea of that. Looks like an invisible rocket sitting on top of the top, and that's not the goal I have in mind. So let me try to put the... No, I'm not liking that. Hold on. Well, I've worked all day and I've got these 3 bits done. And I mean all day. I took a little bit of lunchtime, but pretty much worked straight through to get this far. And it would have been a lot easier had I had decent instructions. But stopping and figuring it out, I suppose, is part of man's quest for knowledge. But looks like it's going to be a clearer day tomorrow, and we might get some paint on some of these things. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding on the Lunar Module and some puttying tonight in preparation for that. Well, there's nothing left in this big box but some sprues of spare parts, duplicate parts that weren't needed, and of course decals and instructions. So a big old lid, big old box, a desk full of parts, or desk full of rockets, or Saturn V. So we got one more cleanup to do, and then I think tomorrow I'm going to jump back on the Amtronic, get my head wrapped around that again. This mail call, late for a Tuesday afternoon, and no sooner did I get rid of one big box than I got another big box, and I know what this is, and I've been waiting for it, and let's look at it together. It's got a lot of tape on it. Let's take a look. This is more my speed. This is the test shot of the new Space 1999 Hawk kit. This is coming from round 2 in the near future. I was sent this by Mr. Jamie Hood so that I can develop the painting masks for it. And I can't wait to get started on it, because although it looks like it might share some of the same components as what I've just been working on, this is science fiction, my friends. This I bet you this will make a whole lot more sense putting it together than even the Saturn V. So I'll look forward to giving you a review. I'm going to snap these 4 trees apart so that I can more easily carry things around. Back, it is what is it today? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday already. Man, this week's going by. And working on the Amtronic today. And since the whole idea of this was to be building a car, I am gluing things in place to keep it a car. I know this thing is supposed to be all things to all people, with every single flap and widget being able to open and close, and you can fold the wheels up and make it a magnetic shuttle, and you can fold the wheels down. But I'm going to be gluing the wheels in the down position to make it a car, because this axle deal in the back doesn't want to seem to work, and it could be just my limited skills at making models, but it seems to me that when the wheels are down, there's no way to lock them in the up position, or I'm sorry, lock them in the down position. So as soon as you sit this on the ground, the wheels fold up like a cheap tent. So I'm going to be replacing the plastic sprue axle with a brass one. And to do that, you kind of have to, see, there you go, you kind of have to bend it over these, it's fine if you want to do that, that's great, but there's no way to keep it in the down and locked position for a car. So, and that's a pretty flimsy angle for that wheel to be at anyway. So what I'm going to do is glue those down with the wheels roughly square. Because even I know what a car should look like when it's sitting on the road. And it's time to get some of the stuff glued down. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. I need to glue the seats into the front module and go from there. And like I said, it's just time to start gluing stuff down. I'll be plenty happy if I can keep the doors opening and the two sections disconnecting from each other, but they will have their wheels down at all times. Okay, starting to nail things down, and I've got the drivetrain and the transmission and the oh so futuristic turbine engines in the I guess this is the back portion, the trailer portion of the Amtronic, and I've just set them in place with a little bit of super glue. And I'll let that dry, and I've got the fan installed. Let's say those tires are awfully tiny. It's like bicycle tires, but they do turn, so we do have some mobility. I'm going to let all of this set up, put it off to the side. Actually, I need to, I might want to touch the beige paint inside there, but we're going to let that sit off to the side. I've got this cockpit to the cabin to the point where I like it, but I want to pour some clear epoxy down in there to kind of lock the seats in place without having to worry about getting glue on the outside here. If I can seal it up from the bottom, that'll also give it some weight too. So let's mix up some epoxy and pour it in there. In the mid-afternoon now on Wednesday, and we are continuing work on the, and I say the royal we, I am continuing work on the Amtronic, AM2, Amtronic, every time I say that I feel like AM2, the AMT-tronic. So I'm trying to finalize some colors, start putting some stuff together, and I'm getting ready to install the engine into the back of this so that I can put this back plate on. And I was playing with this thing and looking at it, and it finally struck me what it reminds me of. And that is, for those of you out there who are lucky enough to have seen the Yellow Submarine movie, it reminds me of the motor for the Yellow Submarine when Jeremy Hillary, boob PhD, pulls it out, and it's just this tiny little bread box of a thing. Not really connected to anything. You see the little side exhausts going down, but not really connected to any drivetrain, but yet it's still supposed to go in there. So kudos for the design of the overall kit, but several marks taken down for the actual engineering of it, because nothing seems to join up like it's supposed to. There are no axles, there are no transmissions. It's just yeah, it's just none of the standard car stuff you would expect to see. And I guess this is my fault for picking a car that is so far out of the envelope, so to speak, as far as normal cars go. But this little guy back here isn't much more to brag about. I mean, it's two little turbines that don't seem to have any connection to a, oh no, I don't know, a fuel source or an exhaust. Those little things there I don't really buy as exhaust, which is strange because they are supposed to line up with these, but there's no way on God's green earth that they will do that. So I had to cover the backs of those so that you wouldn't see just how far off they were. But work is progressing, and merrily we shall roll along. On the Saturn V front, I did spray some paint up in there so that I could see what the detail actually was. I hate working with clear parts because you can never really see the detail until you spray them. And then that will sit on top of, that will sit on top of that clear part on the top of the rocket, since there's no way to avoid using that clear part. Well, as you can tell, the sun coming in the window, the weather has turned today, so I have been able to get quite a few things primed that I wanted to get primed. I've got a lot of the Saturn V primed now. I primed the Lunar Module, top and bottom. Now, you may ask why the bottom is primed in black, and that's simple because I'll be painting that gold, and you always want to prime your metallics in black rather than in white or gray. So that's nice and dry, and I am doing the same with the main engine bells, and I'm getting ready to do these ones. And the one on the command module, I want to get that big bell primed. And also getting a coat of body color on the Amtronic, believe it or not. And this is the color that I'm going with. It's kind of a metallic teal blue thing, and it's not going on as easy as I'd like because it is straight out of the Duplicolor can. That's not good. I wish I could airbrush it. I think what I'm going to do is probably decant some, put it in the airbrush to take care of its bright aqua metallic is what we're calling it. And of course it got, even though I tried taping off the interior, it got all over everything. So, and once you put your fingers in it, it comes right off. So I'll be touching that up many times, but you can see the doors are kind of opening, and that's the front. Of course, I've got to repaint those seats now because I got paint all over them, but what are you going to do? There's the tiny putt-putt engine. So had to put all the panels kind of in place to get the paint on them, and now I'll pop those back out and attach the wheels to them. But yeah, you have to touch up the fan blade. That paint just gets everywhere. That's what happens when you mix rattle cans and airbrushing. This is the result of the overnight gluing. I took a couple rubber bands and I glued, or I rubber banded the back on to get it in the right position, and then I encircled it with CA to keep it in place. And of course that just leaves this blue to be touched up, or this metallic aqua to be touched up. And of course I did some wet sanding on the back at the same time. The big problem is going to be whether or not I can decant this into an airbrush and spray it on that way, because it is the devil's old noise when you're trying to spray it out of the rattle can. It just gets, it's like sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere, and I hate it. So I have to try to find a more refined way of spraying it. And now the reason I've got rubber bands on this is I am trying to decide whether or not I want to glue the interior to the floor or glue it to the top. I think gluing it to the floor is going to be the better route, so that it holds its shape. But the interior, you can see, is done. I've taken the vinyl masks off the insides of the windows, but not the outsides, because I want to leave that on whilst I put on the teal paint. And there's going to be a lot of gap filling slash seam filling slash epoxying around those door frames to get those to fit. But overall, all in all, I think that works. And I just need to do it. Of course, I had to remove this wheel because, and there you see it, in the midst of spraying all that blue on there, or the teal, I got some on the rim, so I have to repaint that. That's, like I said, it gets everywhere. And I did some repainting on that fan blade that I've got to re-silver now. But these wheels are in. All I got to do now is put the wheel guards over them, and they'll be done. Which is kind of a shame, because they I kind of like the wheels being visible, but you got to have those fenders on there. Yes, I realized after this very late date that these are on backwards. The small edge should be at the front, and this flat edge should be at the back. But I decided to make it look like more of a hammerhead than a airfoil. So sue me. That's how I like it. That's what I'm gonna do with it. And then once all of this is masked off or touched up, then I can remove these masks as well and glue this canopy down to the frame that's on the inside. The only reason I'm holding it in place now is because I have some of this blue touching up to do. And let's see what else. I'm stalling because I don't want to get to the painting, but I really need to. So let's clean the brush out and get it ready for this enamel paint. I really like how these rubber bands have come to play as far as holding stuff together while the glue dries, or keeps the form while things are setting up. And I think I'm going to use it when it comes to how to sit this floor pan into the bottom of the car. Underneath there are no attachment points. There's no it kind of just sits there. But I don't really know where it makes contact. There are no pins and holes to sit it down into. So what I think I'm going to do is take these bands off and put in a little bit of bed of this two-part epoxy putty, and sit it down in there and see where exactly the floor pan makes contact. And then what I'm going to do, what I can see down in here, I'm going to roll up some of that putty and just jam it in there, keeping that swivel joint clean so that this little door hickey here can swivel, but also pull it up tight to the sidewall and then put some of that putty in there. I think that'll work. Plus it'll give it a little bit, it gives the model a little bit of weight, because the center of gravity is right underneath there, and adding some weight is a good thing. But let me take these bands off, and I'll think I'll maybe a little bit clearer. See, what you got here is just a big wide open, and you don't know how much of that actually hits the floor. So what I'm going to do is put some putty on either side of this, lay it in there, and then I know that it makes contact right here because there's a little divot that hits just the top of that hump, so I can put some actual glue on that. But I think what I'd like to do is just finish out some of this floor pan stuff with the putty, and fill in some gaps with that. Okay, good news. I was able to decant a little bit of that blue paint, or the aqua metallic, into an airbrush. Cleaned it all out first. Always a necessity when you're switching from acrylics to enamels. And I was able to do some refined spraying over some spots, and I'm letting that dry now before I head on to the rest of it. This contraption of rubber bands and clamps is a little bit of overkill, I agree, but it's necessary to keep that floor pan in place. And then once that's all done and dusted, and I clean up whatever marks have been left from that, then I can attach it to the top part of the body. And that's my goal for this week, is to get all of this done, with the only thing left that needs to be done would be some final picking at details and stuff like that. But I want to get the majority of the construction done on the Amtronic this week so that I can hop over and spend more time on the Saturn V. The construction of the Saturn V is really only half the battle, because the accurate painting of it is going to be more of a challenge. Okay, in today's chapter of Table Full of Rocket, I've went outside because it's nice out, and I took some white primer out there, and I added some more white primer to the bottom and to other parts that had never gotten white primer before. And so we are starting the whitening of the Saturn V. It'll be like greased whitening. Sorry about that. I have not had lunch yet. But you can see I'm starting to mass in some basic colors, and I always do that first, and then I refine them as I go. So let's let this missile do some drying. And again, because you don't want to, you know, you got to get this whole thing white, but you don't want to sit there and just spray and spray and spray to get it white. You got to take it in stages. Say it with me, children. You have to take it in stages. So that's what we're doing here. And we are getting to the really interesting parts now on the Amtronic, and I'm popping windows again. I hate these windows. I hate them with a passion. But what are you going to do? See, here you can see the window that popped out. I'm getting ready to staple these dang things in if I have to, because the glues that I'm using just ain't cutting it. Well, there's one more lugging and tugging I've got to do on this body shape, and that is to get it to match the bottom. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and glue all that up. Now that the seats are nice and snug, I'm going to glue all this up, and if any more windows pop, then they pop. But then that will be the last time I can. I'll worry about sanding those seams between the top and bottom and blending all that in, and then touch the blue up one last time. But it's looking good. It's buffing out nicely, so to speak. So let's get the top and bottom glued together and get these rubber bands on it. Well, this is racing towards the finish line. I just put the last coat of hopefully the last coat of a blue. We'll see. I might have to put a clear over it. But it is the metallic blue Tamiya. I switched from the enamel over to an acrylic, and just put a light coat over it. So in some angles, when you look at it, it still has that metallic teal to it, and then some other angles it has more of the metallic blue. So kind of funky that way. I think it works. And we're going to let this dry good and well, and then it'll be time to pull off the masks on the windows and see how well the inside lines up. And then we will be down to the final details on this, painting what I can still reach with a brush, like the... Oh, I forgot to tell you, spoke to my good buddy Brian last night up in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Hello, Brian. He has built this model before. He was one of the people who told me that I should get this model and build it, that I would like it. And he, for the most part, I did like it. But he was one of those folks that built it into a shuttle. And when he saw my last video, he says, well, you know that part you're missing? I still have that. I never used it. I will be happy to give you mine. So, yay, I have the command yoke coming for this kit. Now, I may have to wait until Wonderfest to pick it up from him, but since it's easy enough to get to, I won't have to worry about gluing it on until later. I could certainly do that. So that situation has been solved. Thank you, Brian. And letting this dry now. I kind of like the way it goes from this lighter into this dark. That's kind of neat. I don't know how much of that's just lighting, but I do kind of like that. Okay, one other thing I did whilst I was out at lunch was to go stop by the auto parts store, pick up more white sandable primer for this big beastie, and then the final colors, which will be universal white and universal black. And I wanted them glossy because I know I got decals to go over them, and then I will flat coat it after that. But these, take a look. That's how complicated the paint scheme is. Black, white, and then some silver and some metal colors for the engines and for the command module. But Not a lot of intricate painting, just a lot of complicated marking off of things. But first thing to do would be to get a good basic white coat on the whole deal. So I want to get the white sandable primer and sand it all down, get all those bumps smoothed out, and then hit it with the universal white, mask it off, and then hit the parts with the black. So shouldn't be all of that. I mean, it's got to be tough, but not exactly Rembrandt. Okay, since the last you saw, I put a second color on the bottom half of the Amtronic, because honestly, when was the last time you saw a car that was the same color top and bottom? So I just it's a darker blue, it's non-metallic, but it's in the same family, just to give it a little bit of contrast, and that's dried. And so now let's peel the tape off and see how the two-tone looks. Okay, one last bit of report for the night. I've just pulled off the window maskings. Everything obviously needs some cleaning, but looks better than I was afraid of. I have a couple of ideas in mind for how to neaten up the edges of the windows, but I gotta tell you, it could have come out a lot worse than that. So I have to glue this guy down yet. Still not glued down. This is looking pretty good. This is ugly. I do not like this, but it was completely unavoidable. You had to glue that over top of it. So how to make it clean is the next step, and that's what we'll do tomorrow. Okay, I just put the finishing touches on the Amtronic. I have a little bit of construction left to do, but the finishing touch as far as the paint goes, it's nice pinstriping, gasketing, a lesson I've learned from the Proteus. You need to put some gaskets around your windows. It hides a multitude of sins. Not only do your windows look cleaner, but any of the little fogging that you get around the edge is hidden behind. And it just looks like an edge that's supposed to be there now, as opposed to when your window just dies into the frame with no transition. So that's done. This is done inside and out on this one because it lifts up. But that one's done. So all I got to do now is glue this into here and these wheel covers on, and we will be set. Okay, here we go. I won't say it's finished, but it is darn close. I don't know why that seam isn't closing up, but pretty close to finishing. I can pick at it for a while longer. I need to paint those in. There's some little details here and there, and I'll finish that up next week, but that's pretty close to being done, if I do say so myself. Not too shabby. That's where we'll end it. That's where we'll end this for this week. Well, this impressive pile of plastic on the desk signifies the end of another work week. Mostly done on the Amtronic. Some picking at it to do over the weekend and maybe into next week, but it's mostly done. The construction on the Saturn V is done. I've got everything built that needs to be built, and now we take it in stages and start to paint it and then decal it, and that's going to be a job on its own. And then of course this little pile of plastic right here looks very much like a test shot of a Space 1999 Hawk, which means I have to, and this is the old NPC Hawk I have just for reference, which means I've got another project to do. So that's where we're going to close it out for this. Look at him nestled in his little cubby hole. He's so precious. And that's where we're going to knock it out for this week. And that's going to bring it to the end for this week. Got a lot done, got a lot more to do. Was doing some research over the week, and I came up with some interesting bits of info. The Amtronic car was designed, reading the instructions, some of the press that came with the instructions, designed in 1969, ironically, same year as the Apollo 11 went to the moon, or parts thereof went to the moon. So that was a neat little bit of synchronicity. all the construction done on the Saturn V. Don't have. We start doing the painting, the decaling next, which is the big important work. And I found a way to wrap my head around the sci-fi-ness of it. You could say, yes, that is a Saturn V, but to me, it is the Saturn V from Men in Black 3, or the Saturn V from Doctor Who, or the Saturn V from Star Trek. Any of these that use the stock footage of a Saturn V, then I'm going to say that's that Saturn V, and there you go. And that gets me around my real space, but also allows me to put myself in the frame of mind, because I could see on the gantry inching his way towards the command module, a little tiny Gary 7, or a real tiny Agent K, or the Doctor. So that's how I'm wrapping my head around it. So until next week, when we'll be back at this, have a good week. Be good to each other. Build a model or two if you can, and we'll see you here next week.